Welcome in to DNVR Buffs Live. It's me, Henry, and Dev, as always. I'm sure everybody who's watching this already knows, but the Buffs got blown out. That was a 30-0 loss. We've got some fun stuff, though. We're going to play the pain game. We're going to play the blame game. Those two segments going to take a long time. We're going to wrap things up with helmet stickers. That one will be nice and quick. Dev, how's it going?
It's going good. First off, let me tell you something I just learned today. Do not show up like late to the Buffs games and do not leave right after the Buff games. I found that out the hard way today. It was pretty rough. The traffic is insane. It is. I don't know why my mind didn't wrap itself around the idea that there's that many fans that are so ready to watch their team play.
It's crazy. And that's why we're starting this one late, because I had a couple things to do after the game. You did too. But the drive back, usually, so from my apartment to the facilities, it's 35 minutes. Today was over an hour. It was just dumb, which, I mean, it does make sense because it's like 50,000 people driving. But also I left like an hour and a half after the game. Yeah, whatever. Let's just jump right into this, to the pain game. This is the one where we talk about some of the things that happened in this game, and then we rate them on a 1 to 10 scale, with the 1 being not so bad, the 10 being super, super painful. For example, like you stub your toe, it's like a 5, it's like a 6, it hurts. The Texas A&M loss last week, that was right up there. That was like an 8, maybe even a 9, because they held on for so long and blew it. Let's just start with like the day in general. You sum up this whole 30-0 loss, 1 to 10. Where does that fit on the pain scale?
It was a 10. It was actually painful. And the reason that it was so painful is because you had so high of expectations going into this game. That Texas A&M was a game that got away from them, and you expected them to resemble that team, or to be the team that we had just seen that just played a top team in the country. Into the final couple minutes of the game with the lead. There was progression that you've seen from each week, and then for you to go in there and lay a goose egg and not look anything like that team, I think that was really painful for the players. It was painful for, of course, the coaching staff, but also like the fans and everybody else that is like bought into this team. It's like now you're in a spot of, where do you go from here?
Exactly. And we'll get into that question later on. Because there's some options. None of them great, but it really is a 10. And specifically, I think it's a 10 just because of how long it was. That Texas A&M loss, yeah, it hurt. But you're leading a lot of the way. And sure, things kind of took a turn in the second half, specifically when you lost Jarek Broussard. But it was only like 5 minutes of that game that you were losing. And then another 10 minutes of game time that you're like, oh, things are probably going to take a turn here. But this one, it was from the jump. I mean, that first snap from Noah Fenske goes through Brendon Lewis's hands, and it just kind of got worse from there. It was a solid 3 hours of just sucking from Colorado, and that was not fun at all. That's an absolute 10 on the pain scale. You hit that nail on the head. I'll throw this one at you. How about the negative 19 rushing yards? Where does that fit on the pain scale?
That is absolutely a 10. It's also a 10. There was a lot. There might be a trend here. There might be something that we're seeing here. But I mean, the reason that it's a 10 is because this is a team that you knew they were going to establish the run super early. This is a team that has a lot of talented backs that you already knew what it was going to be. And I mean, and it's hurting my man Harrison. So of course it has to be a 10.
Mm-hmm.
There was things that we didn't get answered as far as Jarek Broussard and why he didn't start in that game. Or in the case with that, also you couldn't get anything going with any of the other backs. And then of course Lewis, he just had like such a rough day, and it was compounded with the sacks, which counted as like bad rushing yards. So That was horrible. There was nothing that you had to get going. And I already know that the game plan going into it was, let's stop the run and make them pass. And they obviously stopped the run.
Yep. I'm going to pause real quick and just say, we don't have like a specific question segment. So if we get questions like this, let's just like pause what we're doing and hit them. Student section, bright spot. Honestly, I might give them a helmet sticker just because I'm running so low on options. The student section's been good so far this year. They're showing up. They were wearing white, which, we don't got to dig too deep here. You know who else is wearing white, though? The Minnesota Golden Gophers and the white pants and the white jerseys. And we don't need to go too deep down that road. But the student section was good. And they didn't really start clearing out until it got to 20-0. And that was in the third quarter. Can't complain there.
I think it was rough. First off, it was a whiteout on a shutout. So that was maybe not bring that one back. Maybe they don't need to bring that one back.
Maybe not.
Second off, Minnesota had a huge, like their own, fan base that I did not expect to see. They traveled really well, but also there were so
terrible overalls.
There was there was a lot of overalls. There was a bunch, like the student section for CU was like so big, but then for them to get blown out so bad, they left early, and it's like, are they going to come back? Would you want to come back? Why do you come back? Like, there's a lot, there's so many questions from this game, and even the student section has questions.
Absolutely. And it's like, what, next home game, USC? You'd think you'd get a big turnout. You got to factor in what they just saw. If it's a night game, I think that you probably see a decent turnout. If it's another 11 a.m. kickoff, keep it close to the second half and see what happens then. What were we talking about, though? The rushing yards, where the Buffs were outgained 277 to -19 on the ground. Whew. Yeah, we'll give it a 10. I think that there's Jarek, I don't think got in the first 3 drives and then got in on the 4th drive, carried the ball 5 times for 8 yards. Oof. On top of that, the rest of the offense combined for another 16 carries and -27 yards. So it's just incredible. Let's jump into the beginning. Hey, let's touch on that first snap, the one that Noah Fenske sent to Brendon Lewis and wound up on the ground.
I mean, you set the tone early for Minnesota, where they come into the game with the game plan to try to stop the run. You also have momentum, even though you're coming off of a loss. You have momentum going into the game where you just played so well. And then you start out like that, and you just can never find your footing from there. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of, the Super Bowl with the Broncos, a while back. But it's just like you start out like that. I don't know how you bounce back, and I don't think that they knew a way to bounce back. And when you already start out like not going the right way, there's just no way to get the momentum back, especially when nothing is going for you.
Yep. I'll give it about a 5. It did hurt. It definitely hurt. But at the time you're thinking like, oh, it's one snap, and sure, now you're looking at a 2nd and 15 or whatever it was, but it's a long game, and it sure was a long game. Things didn't get any better though. They also, they started their first 3 drives with 3 and outs. So what about those 3 and outs? Where does that fit in on the scale?
I would give it about a 5. The only reason I give it a 5, first off, it blew. It was not good for them, and also they started out on the wrong foot. But also Minnesota had 3 and outs, so you basically just kept getting a refresh, and you also got your defense like behind you, like, okay, we got you now. Get us give us some time off. Give us something. You guys haven't given us anything all year. And we keep on getting you out of these spots. But it didn't initially hurt them like early on. It did come back to bite them, of course, because they never got their footing. But to start out the game, I don't think that was as big of an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll go like a 7. I'll go a 6. It's not quite a 7. There were a lot of things that really hurt. That was still early on. That was when there was still hope. Because in that stretch, Minnesota misses a field goal, and you say, okay, there's a nice little break. It's like the game is just starting over again. And then you have like they trade punts and that sort of stuff. But then when Minnesota puts together those 2 back-to-back touchdown drives, that's when things kind of started to kick into gear for me. And about halfway through the second quarter, you're looking at the scoreboard saying, hey, sure, it's only 13-0. That's when you really got to start kicking it in gear, though. And that just didn't happen really at any point in this game. What? The longest drive was the last one of the game. Drew Carter came in, 9 plays, 29 yards. Other than that, they had a 4-play, 15-yard drive. They had a 3-play, 8-yard drive, 5-play, 6-yard drive. Also a 3-play negative 15-yard drive. But yeah, it was brutal. After those 2 touchdowns, though, they go up 13-0. Pain scale, what was that for you?
That gets higher just because I feel like they didn't. I'll go at 8. I don't feel like Colorado's offense felt like they could do anything. And when you're playing catch up with no offense and no scheme or no anything of how to try to get around it, and you have no answers, plus the defense just gave up, 2 touchdowns. They're like, we're giving you guys everything we could, and we still can't keep up. So now you get to see heads dropping, and you see things just not going their way. And again, there's no answer when things aren't going your way, and you can't do anything offensively on top of that. So that's got to be high for me.
Yep. I think that's probably the right call. It's just so hard because so much of the game was so painful that I feel like I'm kind of overreacting when I say like, oh yeah, 8, 9, 8, 10, like way up there. But that really is what this game was. They lost 30-0 and were outgained by hundreds of yards. You just don't see this very often, especially at home. And I agree. Once you see that get to 13-0, that's when you start to think, that was the number for the defense. Like the defense, we kind of thought coming into this could give up about 13 points, maybe give up 17 points, and they'd have a chance to win. It turns out maybe we were overvaluing that offense a little bit. Now, what goes differently if you wind up with another 20, 25 carries for Jarek Broussard? Who knows? Because that first time he did touch the ball, he got to the edge, he shook a guy, he turned what should have been a 1-yard gain into, I think it was 8, which again, not massive, but I think to that point, it was the biggest game of the day. Ooh, question. Who do you hire to replace Chev? Let's bring that one back when we get to the blame game, because we'll be really digging into Chev then. We'll be digging into Brendon Lewis then. Going to be a lot of people to dig into at that point. A lot of digging on the way. Yeah. How about the Brendon Lewis fumble? Where does that fit in on the scale?
A 9. He already was having a very rough day. He already does not, have the backing like you would expect. And it's starting to seem like it's affecting the team in the way that they look at him just on the field right now. Losing, when you start losing, it makes it difficult just because winning cures all. So I think that has to be about a 9, because I'm sure that it led to the fact that he was benched later in the game. When you just look at it on the scale of what do we do with our quarterback?
Yep.
He has nothing going for him.
Yep. I agree. And I think that, it was that was the fumble that gave up the touchdown that put it up 20-0 and kind of did end the game. It was crazy because it was a 13-point game for so long, but you never really felt like the Buffs were going to be able to close that gap. But still, they break one big play. They get a turnover on defense. All of a sudden, it's a 1-score game, and they still have 6 possessions left, plenty of time to change things. But yeah, that really was, to me, kind of like the nail in the coffin. That was, I agree, a 9. That it had been a tough stretch for Brendon up to that point, but that really was kind of like the final piece where you say, wow, what a tough day for him. Because there was a play a little bit before. I mean, you talked about it, kind of the body language from his teammates. There was a play where there were a couple receivers out to the right. There was a receiver out to the left. He's got Jarek next to him. Jarek goes in motion before the snap out toward that sideline, and it's just a little option play. Either he throws it out to Jarek or he runs the ball up the field. And he ran the ball up the field. He got a 1 yard. Meanwhile, it looked like Jarek could have run as far as he wanted. And Jarek, after the play, was just looking at the sideline with his palms up. And, you don't like to see that. You wish he would kind of keep those thoughts to himself. But can you really blame him at that point in the game after seeing all this when you are the Pac-12 Player of the Year and you're just not getting the ball in that opportunity? It was tough. It was tough. Any other moments or stats or anything like that you want to hit?
No, just because I feel like we hit them later, in the other segments. That was a painful game, really. Like, you could say everything was a 10 when you have an offense that really cannot do anything at all. Can't keep the defense off the field. They're exhausted. So there's not many positives to a game like that, especially when your offense, they can't help you.
Exactly. And you, again, like, there just weren't many positives. I saw our guy D-Line say earlier, at least Nate played well. It's like, yeah, he did play well. And we'll talk more about him later on. But let's just go straight into this blame game. Here's my first question for you. You got to pick one person who you put the majority, the bulk of this 30-0 loss on. Who do you choose?
I mean, it hurts. It hurts to say it. So many people are, calling for the coach, the offensive coordinator. While I do think that he can make some changes, I do think that if you don't have a quarterback that you can trust in and believe in right now, to throw the ball, you have a quarterback that you can't throw the ball with. You can't put him in packages where you could get him out in open space and have him running, which is his strong suit, because you have this fear of him being hurt, or you have a fear of if he gets hurt, we have no one else to go with. I think that them having Lewis in a bubble, with the idea of him not being able to throw the ball as well, I think you have to place a lot of the blame on Lewis. He's the one that's holding the ball for so long. He's the one that's not, putting the offense into spots. And I know it's hard to put it on a player that's pretty much a true freshman, playing in the Pac-12 and playing against these really big teams. But we thought he was getting better, but overall he's not really doing well. I think that you say he's doing better because there was not much else you could go up to. And you also start with Northern Colorado, even against, last week, even that he didn't really play well. He just kept them enough in it, but there is no breakout performance and you don't see one on the way. So I think I place a lot of the blame on the quarterback because it's their job to get something going and to generate some type of offense, and they just can't right now.
Yep, I agree. Number one on my list, I go Brendon too. And again, it's tough. And you look at this, I saw people saying on Twitter, around halftime in the third quarter, if JT was healthy, they'd probably be putting him in right now. And it's like, if JT was healthy, he probably would have been playing since the second quarter of that Northern Colorado game if he didn't win the starting job. But yeah, I mean, it is tough. And I don't want to be too harsh on the kid because you do have to remember, he's 19 and playing this level of football, and it isn't a situation where, typically when you get a 19-year-old quarterback, because sometimes there are guys who are that young and they are ready to contribute at this level. Those are guys who gone and have won that job and have beaten guys and gotten themselves to that point. It's rare that you see a 19-year-old who's just kind of thrown into the fire by circumstance. And, the quarterback competition was close. And that was how it was portrayed to us, and I believe that it was close. At the same time, I have a tough time believing JT wasn't going to win that job, just based on what we've seen through 3 weeks, because what I saw today was a lot like what we've seen in the last couple of weeks where, just the truth is there were a lot more plays out there for him. There were a bunch of plays, especially in those first 2 drives. There was one in particular that I remember where he had 2 receivers open. He couldn't commit to either of them in the pocket. All of a sudden, the pressure starts getting to him after he can't commit. He rolls out. Brady rolls out with him. He's got Brady open in a window for a second. He doesn't get the ball to him either. And then he has to throw the ball away. And you're just like, it's rare that you get 3 open wide receivers on one play. And you can't be wasting those opportunities. It's one thing if you don't make the right read and you miss one open receiver. There were guys who were open today. And, we'll talk about Cheverini in a second. But one of the things that is actually true is that Chev schemed open receivers. And if he has a quarterback who can't get the ball to open receivers, there is a limit to what the offense is capable of. Because what is Chev supposed to do there when it comes to the play calling? Is he supposed to say, well, we're just going to run the ball every play because we can't trust that if we get a receiver open, we're going to throw the ball? That might be what it comes down to. But it's just a tough situation that Colorado's in right now, because as of today, the Buffs don't have a quarterback. They have a couple of guys who they can throw out there, and they're young and they're exciting, and both of them have traits that make you think that in the future they could be something good. I'm not ready to say that Brendon Lewis will never be a good starting quarterback, but what I can say is that he's not ready right now. And Drew Carter, he got in for a couple of drives. I think I would have thrown him in there earlier. I think that at the end of that first half, that last drive of the first half, that's probably where I say, you know what? If we don't score points here, well, then we're kind of doing what we're expecting ourselves to do. So we might as well just see if we can get some sort of spark. And if we like it, we go into halftime and we coach Drew up and we get him ready to go in the second half. And if we don't, we gave Brendon a little break, a little time to just sit back and see if he can put himself together. And instead, it was just going and going and going, and he just wasn't ready for it.
Are we going to the next part of the list?
We should probably go on to the next part of the list. Who's your number 2?
It's Chev. It has to be Chev. I see a lot of people, are calling for his head. And after the last 6 quarters where they haven't been able to put up any type of points at all on the board, can you blame them? Winning cures all. And right now they're not winning, and they're also not scoring. So it's easy to place blame on him. And that the Colorado, they just have no identity. They can't pass. Running backs are hurt, and they're not getting loose like you expect them to. They're not living up to those expectations. And the play calling is suffering as a result of both. There's pressure at all times on the quarterback. He's holding the ball for too long, understanding that there's pressure at all times. Not throwing receivers open. It seems like every single route they run is short routes, which kind of tells you a little bit about the quarterback that you went with or you were forced to go with. But you would just expect Chev to be a little bit more creative. That's what I thought he would do. One of his strong suits is just like his relationship building and how much he means to the team. So with that, you would feel like the players would trust in him, and he would trust in his players to go to their strengths. We know Lewis is not a great passer. So how do you put him in packages where he's able to go after those strengths, or, just focus on the things that he does really well, but also implementing the pass? Play action's not working because the run's not working. Play action's not working because you can't pass it to like other spots. The quarterback sneak is just not working anymore. There's so many things that you have seen that have not worked. So how about you open up your playbook and try to find something else? If not, then maybe someone else has to make those decisions. Someone else has to switch it up and just see if there's anything that they can have get going. Chev is he's under the fire right now.
He is. And we'll get back to that in a second. Here's a good question, though, from Z Walsh. Why has the run game got much worse? First of all, you didn't have Jarek. And we saw you kind of had Jarek. You had him for 5 carries. We saw what happened last week without Jarek. In the first half, they were able to move the ball. There's a world in which they come away with 17 points in that first half because they're able to get the QB sneak because they make the field goal. And the second half, nothing good happens. And the common denominator is that Jarek isn't out there. Also, maybe by coincidence, the offensive line looks good when Jarek's out there, doesn't look good when the other guys are out there. And that's not to say that like Alex Fontenot, Ashad Clayton aren't good running backs. They're good running backs. Jarek Broussard is the reigning Pac-12 Player of the Year, and he changes the way that the offense works. And when he is running toward the tackle, the entire defense is running toward the tackle, and that just opens up so many cutback lanes that are only there for him because only he can create them for himself. And so I think that's a big part of it, is that we just haven't seen as much Jarek Broussard in the last 6 quarters or so. And also, the line was bad. I don't want to cover that up. The line was bad. There were a bunch of different blockers that were out there. Fensky started. We saw Jake Wiley. I think he started. Max Ray started. Frank Phillip came in at tackle. Jared Christian Lichtenhand came in before garbage time. Another tackle. They were really rotating up there, and I don't think that was because they just wanted to. And I actually asked Carl that after the game. I said, like, was that the plan? He said, no, we want to rotate 6-7 guys. But that's just the situation we're in. Getting back to Chev, though, yeah, I mean, he needs to do better. He absolutely needs to do better. And I think that a lot of maybe the offense that they've installed kind of needs to change. And that's tough to do on the fly, but at the same time, somebody pointed out you need 2 running back sets up there. I totally agree. How are you not getting multiple of these guys on the field? Because then it does bring the triple option into play. That's something Texas A&M runs, not like the 90s version, but out of the shotgun. They'll put 1 running back on one side, 1 on the other. You got the handoff read if you want that, and then you run around and you can pitch it or run it. That's something that the Buffs can do, but they don't. The jet sweeps, we haven't seen any of those, and that's one of those things out of the spread. You're stretching the defense out. That's another way to attack those edges. Just got to get those to him. Yeah, Z-Walsh, again, you can be creative in the run game, and we aren't doing it. I agree. And also, there's the couple of second and longs where they're running the ball. Everybody hates that. There is nothing fans like less than a run on 2nd and 10. Now, does that mean you never do it? No, that's just unrealistic, because you look at the splits. What? So Colorado threw the ball 24 times, ran the ball 21 times. Remember that runs include sacks, and so you can really excuse that. Is that 4 sacks? I can't tell, but what if it was 4? That'd be 28 and 17. And that's already a wide gap. You got to find times to run the ball. And the real problem is they aren't picking up yards on first down. And again, it kind of goes back to Brendon, because on some of those first downs, they're throwing the ball and there's guys open and you're just not taking advantage of it. And that's why Brendon, to me, is number 1 to blame. And is that a surprise? No, he's the quarterback of a football team that didn't put up any points. And it's not really a surprise that the offensive coordinator is number 2. Like, that's just the way that this should play out. And we've seen how it has played out exactly here. Yeah, there needs to be more creativity. There needs to be, I think that still too many second and long runs. But again, the problem is that you're getting yourself into second and long, and you got to give the ball to Jarek Broussard and these running backs. We all know it.
Yeah. Number 3 on my blame game list, it's got to be that offensive line. I know that we just touched on it, but it's not only on Lewis when there's pressure at all times. It feels like at all times that someone's back there, or they're pressuring him and putting him in spots where he kind of has to make quick decisions. And what we've seen from him is he's not making those quick decisions. He also is not a player that's putting his guys out on the line or trying to get them blasted. He also doesn't make those decisions where it's like a lot of interception, or close to interception. So he holds it a little bit longer, but you still have to make those decisions. If you have an offensive line that gives him more time, maybe he's able to run a little bit longer. One of the questions that just came up was, is the run game, how is it getting worse? I'm not sure. I mean, of course it's getting worse, but I think that it also falls in line with the fact that other teams know that they can't throw the ball. So now they're expected to go after the run. Now they have more guys in the box. Now they're committed to the run until he proves that he can throw it. And he takes 1 or 2 shots a game, but you don't have time like that. So the offensive line does have to take a lot of that blame as well, because they got to buy more time. They have to open up the holes for other guys, not just Broussard. Even when Broussard's in, you got to put him in spots where he's able to get loose. And that means being patient and things like that. So that offensive line, they also have to take some blame.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I go for number 3 as well. And, you brought up the running game. It really sucks when there's nothing stressing those safeties, because every time that you miss a throw or decide not to throw to somebody. They just take one more step up. And again, Colorado's receivers, I thought, were awesome in this game. It didn't matter because nobody was throwing them the ball, but they were open. And that's something we talked about all week, is that this is not a good secondary for Minnesota, and it's a secondary that can be exposed. I thought I saw that. It was like the 4th or 5th drive. There was a little dump down to Brady Russell across the middle. I think it was like 6-8 yards, something like that. But right behind him, you had Dimitri Stanley coming across past the sticks on a dig, and he was open. On the outside, you had Brendan Rice on a post, and if you put that ball in the right spot, he could still be running. It just sucks. It just sucks that you're not able to stress the back of the defense like that, because first of all, you'd be picking up a bunch of chunk plays and doing it. And second, it would open up so much for the running game. And again, I don't know what you do at this point, because again, Drew Carter, yeah, he looked solid. And it's kind of funny if you look at the stats. Brendon Lewis, 8 of 16, 55 yards. Drew Carter, 4 of 8, 27 yards. Literally half the completions, half the attempts, half the yards, the exact same pace. And there were a couple balls that were kind of off target, but he did decide quickly and he threw the ball. And I do think that if it's me, I'm trying it. I'm going to see what happens with Drew Carter. And we both heard from Carl after the game. And he said, when it comes to Chev and him being the play caller, when it comes to these quarterbacks, he's the head coach, and he needs to really look through his options here and figure out what the best move is going forward. Because there's a real chance that Carl will take over the play calling responsibilities. And we'll see. We'll see if that's what happens. There's a real chance that, in his words, he said, we're going to look at, do we need to put some packages together for Drew Carter and get him a couple series, similar to what they did with Tyler Lytle last year early in the season. And just so that we have that in the back pocket, know that, hey, we've had 3 and outs. Let's throw Drew in and just see if there's a spark. And if there is a spark, then you get to ride him, because again, he's another highly rated guy, and everything we've heard has been that he's not ready, and that makes sense because he's been on campus for 8 months now. But at some point, you got to try something, right? At some point, you got to try something, unless Brendon steps up.
And just to give those, our viewers like a look behind the curtain, when it comes to Darrell, they asked some hard-hitting questions for him, and he also expects those questions, and he's really blunt about it, which is, I think that's a great characteristic. But he straight up came out and said Lewis needs to play better. He's struggling, and this is not his first time really saying that either. But the fact that he basically talked about the backup and saying that moving forward, maybe we do need to take a look at that. Without him being the offensive coordinator, I think that's pretty telling. I think that's something that you have to think about. He also did mention Lewis, so I think that there's going to be a lot of packages. And just to come around full circle, maybe that's why we didn't see, the backup for the entire game or see him longer, because moving forward, now how is the next opponent going to prepare for the team? They don't know if it's going to be Lewis. They don't know if it's going to be Carter. You just don't have an idea of who it could possibly be, and there's not a lot of film on it, which throws it off a bunch. Also, the fact that he, spoke about, maybe I am going to have to make those decisions, because it was straight up asked to him, are you going to have to take a look at, your offensive coordinator, which everyone was already calling for. He did not run from it. He's yeah, I am. Everything is out on the table, and it's going to be a clean slate, and we have to look at everything. And that's what you want from a coach that, one, takes responsibility, two, he's very transparent. There has to be a change. There's going to be a change. And, as time progresses and as those losses come, now you have to make big decisions. And I feel like he's a coach that's ready to make those big decisions.
I agree. And, that was a big press conference for Carl, because there's a lot of ways that could have gone. And I think he handled things well. And I think he was honest. And I think that he was right. You gotta look at everything after a loss like this, and things need to change. And if they don't change, the change starts at the top with Carl. And I mean, we don't need to start. He isn't on the hot seat or anything at this point, but the loss like this certainly doesn't help. We want to end things on like a little bit more positive note, talk about some of the good things that happened. And by that, we mean talk about the defense. Is there anything else with all of this that you want to touch on?
No, I think that we need to everybody should forget that game. I mean, it happened. It's part of the past. We're not going to talk about that anymore. We got to move on, and we got to get to the positive aspects of the game, which is that
24-hour rule. Yep. And I will say, we'll plug this all right now. Tomorrow, I'll be going back and watching the game, talking about on the DMVR Buffs podcast with like a second set of eyes, a chance to actually watch it without being up in a press box looking down and missing whatever you miss. Tuesday, we'll have Matt McChesney on. Have a feeling he's going to be pretty fired up about this one. On Wednesday, as always, we recap the media availabilities of the week on the podcast. I'll also be going out to Arizona on Wednesday for the game against Arizona State on Saturday. Thursday, what do we do on Thursdays? Oh, Thursday we talk about the next opponent. After watching them Friday, we do the live show previewing the game. So definitely stay tuned for all that stuff. And also, even though Week 1 of college football of pro football is in the books, there's still plenty more to bet on, and there's still an awesome deal out there for you. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is offering all new customers a chance to receive $200 in free bets instantly if they place a $1 bet on any football game this Sunday. That's right. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving all new customers $200 in free bets instantly when they bet at least $1 on any football game. They're safe, reliable, secure. They make it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code DMVR and receive $200 in free bets when you make that first bet instantly. It's promo code DMVR. Get your $200 in free bets instantly this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. All right. And we'll also pull up our DraftKings King of the Game. Dev, do you know who this is?
I don't know who it is, but I know for a fact it has to be our guy, Mr. Landman.
Yep, it is Nate Landman. Another great game. 13 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Actually, 11 of those tackles were solo tackles, meaning that he just ended 11 plays all by himself, which is just crazy to think about. I have these play counts right here. 70 plays for the Gophers, 45 for Colorado. Just crazy. 3 tackles for loss. He was all over the place, and it's so nice to have somebody like that in the middle of the defense, and he did what he always does, and we love to see that.
Yeah, Landman is he's reliable. And he's also a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball who's not a defensive back, which you just don't see a lot. He's making plays. He has his nose, on the football. He's getting – those are not sacks. Those are tackles for losses, which means he's back there and trying to make things happen. He's doing everything he can to try to get the ball back and try to get his defense in it. And that's the type of player that you have to rally behind. And it seems like the defense trusts in him. The defense is, bringing it up. They lose 30-0, but that's not anything that you could just put on the defense. The offensive's inability to get anything going makes it hard on them. These guys are tired. You're not going to be able to be on the field at all times. You're not going to be able to come up with every stop if you're not getting anything going on the other end. I'm sure that it's difficult and it's frustrating a lot to be like, hey, we're doing everything we could. You got to get better. But a player like Landman, he doesn't care. He's going to go out there and do exactly what he has to do because this is a pro. This is a pro that he's doing it by himself. He's assisting on tackles. He's getting guys to their spot. There's like a lot of times if you just watch him out there, he's making sure he knows everything that's happened. High IQ player that also is a bruiser, and you don't see that a lot.
Yeah, totally. And we got a question from Living Regal here. How good or bad is the defense without Nate? Feels like if he wasn't out there, it could have been worse. Yeah, it would have been worse for sure. I mean, you lose any All-American, things are going to get worse. But with Nate in particular, the role that he plays is so important, and especially within the structure of this defense. I'll spoil this, and we'll get to it later. But Guy Thomas is one of my helmet stickers, and he put up 10 tackles with a tackle for loss. He is really breaking out. We'll get into that in a second. But you've got Guy Thomas on one side, you've got Carson Wells on the other side, and you've got Nate Landman in between them. That is just the formula to a good defense, because you got two guys who can set the edge and filter everything into the middle, and you've got Nate Landman that can clean everything up. It is just so nice to know that, you expect to win in the running game every single week, and that is because of Nate. What were the numbers? They wound up giving up 5.2 yards per carry. There were a lot of mistakes in there. This was honestly not the best performance from the defense. They were solid, but it wasn't like what they did last week. It wasn't like what they did last week. I guess to expand on that, just because we're not going to have a chance to later on, Minnesota did get Chris Ottman-Bell back, the receiver who's going to be an NFL type of guy, probably after this season, maybe after next season. He went for 4 catches, 79 yards. That's solid. And he did it against a couple of cornerbacks who, after last week, I thought really had taken the step of being just lockdown type of guys. And now we start to see that maybe against these like elite receivers, you can't just leave these corners out there on an island. Or if you do, 4 for 79, it's not the end of the world if that's what you're giving out up to a top receiver, but the standard's just higher for this defense. And so Christian Gonzalez, if that's what he's doing against Chris Ottman-Bell, well, in 2 weeks, you play Drake London in USC. That's an even better receiver to me. That's a first-round draft pick. And we'll talk about that when we get there, but this performance wasn't the same as last week's performance. Any thoughts on there before we get back to helmet stickers?
No.
Okay.
You go up against a good receiver. You limit them. Don't give up, huge plays. And they actually corrected that in the game really early, because he did get free in that first half. And there was like third down, big plays that happened. But they made sure to slow that down and to stop that, which you do have to enjoy. You're not going to be able to just stop every single top receiver or those big name guys. So I still do think that it was a positivity there, even though there's some things that you could work on and try to tinker. Yeah,
you brought up those third downs. Minnesota converted 3 of their first 5 third downs. 2 of those were to Ottman-Bell. After that, though, 6 straight stops on third down from the Buffs defense. But getting back into helmet stickers, I spoiled, I'll go first, I guess. Guy Thomas, he did it again. And we saw last week just how good he could be. And it was a really great performance, but it was 1 week. Well, now he had double-digit tackles this week. He had another tackle for loss. He was getting into the backfield. He still needs that final little burst to get to the quarterback. He's missing that. That's the one elite trait that would take him to the very top. But what we've seen is that he has turned into a very, very good outside linebacker and a guy who I do think is going to get a shot in the NFL. If he can kind of keep up this sort of pace, he's gotten himself onto that tier.
Yeah, he's another player that he's always around the ball and he wants to make plays. And when you have Landman and then you have him right there, that's trying to stop the run. And this was a team that, they committed to the run and they knew that they were going to commit to the run and they trust in it. They have a very good back. You have to trust in it. But to have guys up there stopping the holes, plugging those holes and trying to get out there and make plays, that was a pretty big game for him. 10 tackles, making sure that there is not big plays. There was a lot of plays that could have happened with this running back. They had some pretty good running backs that had wiggle room and they were able to just get loose in the open field and they eliminated those type of plays. So pretty big day for him. Helmet sticker for sure.
Who's your helmet sticker?
My helmet sticker is going to go to Quinn Perry. So the linebackers are getting all that love this week in this game, and they have to. There were so many runs. I feel like the quarter he had 21 carries, 26 carries or something like that.
Crazy. It's crazy.
And he's been doing that. That's something that I'm sure that Colorado talked about leading into the game. They're going to feed their running backs. They're going to trust into their running backs, which is something that I think Chev, should take a little bit like a longer look at. But we have the guys that are going to try to slow that down, and we're going to try to combat that. And we have Perry in there that can slow it down. We have a very good linebacker core with Landman, Perry, Guy Thomas, and we're going to get in there and we're going to make plays. He had 7 solo tackles, 3 assist tackles, but 10 overall, and he's in plays, and you have to give a sticker to those type of players.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Minnesota ran the ball 53 times, passed it 17 times. Just crazy. Also, I see in the chat Tyler Brown saying he's giving a helmet sticker to Ralphie. I love it. And I was actually going to do that. I'm a little bit disappointed that you stole my bit, but props. Yeah, Ralphie deserves a helmet sticker because they got to give him to someone. And, hey, she was able to run. She's 4 for 4 at Folsom. Things are going well. I will say that first run, a little slow out of the gates. Didn't seem like she totally I don't want to say she didn't know what she was doing, but that definitely wasn't like a Buffalo charge. That was like, oh, yeah, we're running. Okay. Work to be done. But I have a feeling that as the Buffalo gets older and bigger, that kind of comes out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think both runs weren't that great, honestly. I mean, it was great, like as far as it, but getting out the break, I was scared. I was like, oh, Ralphie is not going to try to make it to like midfield, and then just got like a lot stronger, got a lot more confident. Those guys out there, like I got, the luxury of like meeting them and stuff like that. And I like admire what they do. I think it's really cool and how bought in they are with the whole thing. But yeah, Ralphie's, you got to give stickers. It's all for that. It's the best, it's the best thing about Boulder. I feel like is Ralphie.
I agree. My next helmet sticker going to the punter, Josh Watts. Hit a career-long 63-yarder on his first punt. He was punting well. Let me see if I've got this average here. 51.9 yards per punt. It was actually a 62-yard long. 415 total punt yards. You don't see a number like that all that off. But a good day. And, he did have a couple of bad games last year, and some bad punts in particular that kind of stand out. And in talking to him, he said, his first game last year felt like his best game. And now we're starting to see him become a solid punter. You don't see a 51.9 yard average. And here's the thing. So Colorado doesn't submit people for like Pac-12 player of the week for their position unless they win the game. And so we will not get to see Josh Watts. And I'm a voter, so I don't get to vote for Josh Watts to be a special teams player of the week. I think I would have. Who's your next helmet sticker?
My next helmet sticker is gonna go to. I'll go Mekhi Blackman. I just feel like he's always trying to make sure that he's like involved at all times. He gave up some big plays early, but he made sure to like correct those mistakes, and they made sure to not go after him. I'm sure a lot of it was because they committed to the run later on, but he's a player that I don't feel like other people target. I don't think that the quarterback goes after him the same way that they try to go after other guys. And when you're a cornerback that is aggressive and on that island, I think that it changes the ways that they put you on the field. There was a lot of 5-out sets where he was on the island and he's by himself, and he could have been able to give up those type of plays, but I feel like he never does. He's also a defensive back that wants to get in there and try to hit, and that's just not something that you see a lot of times. He does not shy away from contact, so I got to give him a sticker.
I like it. That's all the stickers for me. I was thinking about giving one to Carson Wells for the sack. Just need a little bit more there. There's other guys too. If Chase Penry makes that catch where he got hit hard in the ribs, then he gets a helmet sticker just for making that play, but he didn't make the catch, so I can't go there. I almost want to give him one just because I feel bad about that hit he had to take. Brendon left him out to dry. At the same time, though, it's like on third down, you got to try to pick it up, right? I don't know. That's a tough one. Any more helmet stickers from you, Dev?
No, not this week. You can't be completely positive after a shutout type of week. You could continue to give credit to that defense, and hopefully they stick into it mentally, because I know physically and emotionally, like they're exhausted. The offense is just not matching their energy, and that goes back to the cohesion issues that we've been talking about and trying to get the team back on the right track. But Darrell seems to be a guy that he's going to continue to like get the guys on the same thing, and it's really early on, so you don't want to give up on this team. So I think that there's a lot of football to still be played, and they can turn it around. And what we've seen today is not the type of team that we've seen, period. There's issues, but that's a team that could bounce back and get back to getting on the right foot. And I think that they're going to be in a bounce back spot.
Yep. And it's a big week for a lot of people, and we'll obviously talk about it on the podcast throughout the week. But Darren Chiaverini needs to put some points on the board, and he doesn't have an easy job right now because the offensive line hasn't been all that great. The running backs outside of Jarek have been a little disappointing. Jarek himself needs to get on the field. Brendon Lewis, he struggled, and that's tough to build a game plan around if you're Darren Chiaverini. But you do need to make it happen, because the truth is it's a hard job, but it's your job. And if you can't do it, there's only so many ways that this can go. Brendon, obviously we said that's the number one person that is probably responsible for what happened today. There were more plays out there for him, and he didn't make those plays. And he needs to make those plays. At the same time, can you blame him for being 18, 19 years old, a freshman who's out there playing his first football and struggling? And, a lot of guys would have at least gotten benched there for a half so that they didn't have to go out there and just take that beating he took, because the truth is at this point he isn't ready. So it's a big week because Chev could bounce back against Arizona State. Brendon Lewis could. The running game could. The defense could really make a statement shutting down that explosive offense. But things do need to change. And Karl Dorrell said that to us, and he's going to spend the next day or two figuring out what those changes need to be. We'll see what they are. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, Dev?
No, just continue to believe in that team. If you're a fan, I think that things are going to turn around. But also I think it puts a lot of pressure on guys that need some pressure. So there are going to be changes because there's jobs on the line. And that's from not only the OC, but also like positions and also who's going to be on the field a lot of those times. I really do think that he's going to make sure that he shakes things up if they can't get the result. Darrell does not seem like a guy that's just like, I'm content with what we have, it'll work out. I think that he's not afraid to shake things up and to try to change it. And we've seen that in that fourth quarter. So this is a huge week, so I think that this is a game that you do have to pay a lot of attention to, and they're going against a team that they should win against, I feel like. So those changes happen.
All right. That'll do it for today. Like I said, we got podcasts coming all week. Subscribe to thedmvr.com if you haven't. And we did just drop our Nate Landman shirt, signed him to an NIL deal. I think it came out yesterday, or was it 2 days ago? Something like that. Football season, they all run together, but it's awesome, and a bunch of the money goes to Nate himself, which is great because he's a great guy who does great things on the football field, and great football players deserve money regardless of whether they're getting a scholarship. So yeah, those are the things I'm going to plug, and we'll talk again on Monday, I guess, after I get a chance to review the tape and see what really went wrong. Bye.